The door, he cannot pass. Tommy had grown up hearing the stories about the strange and powerful man who dwelt across the river. Nobody ever saw him, but there were plenty of stories about what it meant if you ever heard a knock at the door from him. It was said that if he crossed your threshold, you'd become cursed, never able to pass through the same door again. Tommy always thought it was some silly superstition made up to keep children in line. But, as he grew older, his curiosity dragged him towards the bridge that spanned the mighty river, and eventually made him stand at its foot. He thought that perhaps prying into the truth of this strange legend would only be the cause of his own regret, and yet, something deep down in his gut compelled him to investigate further. Half afraid and half excited, he gazed across the river, and though he couldn't see it, he knew on the far shore there was a cabin. The sun was already setting, so Tommy decided to make camp alongside the riverbank and sleep on the idea of crossing over tomorrow. That night he had a dream. In it, the mysterious figure was standing outside his door, knocking slightly and peeking through the window. Tommy sprang to his feet, but just as he raised his hand to turn the doorknob, the vision evaporated and he awoke in the darkness, the river rippling around him. Afraid to go back to sleep, Tommy stayed up until morning light, and continued his trek to the other side of the river. As he got closer, he heard the faint sound of knocking coming from afar. He approached the cabin and peered through the windows. Inside, it was a mess. Papers everywhere, some of them burnt, furniture broken and askew, only one lamp still burning in the corner of the room. But the strangest thing of all was that, in the center of the room, stood a figure identical to the one from his dream, staring directly out at Tommy through the window. Paralyzed, the man stayed in place, an eternity of time passing between them before he finally stepped away, walked out of the cabin, and disappeared into the woods beyond. Tommy felt as if his heart had stopped. He wanted to turn and run, but something deep down inside made him move towards the cabin instead and open the door. What he found was beyond his wildest nightmares. On the other side of the door was an old, decrepit version of himself, standing there with his mouth agape in shock. So this is what the legend was about, Tommy thought to himself. He had come to the cabin, and stepped through the door, unknowingly crossing the threshold at which he was not allowed to pass. Now he was cursed, seemingly condemned to stay at the cabin for the rest of eternity, unable to step back through the door and return to his life from before.